Well, here we are starting day 16 of the trip. We are in Dawson City in the Yukon after our monster voyage from Inuvik down to Dawson in a single day through the rain and a little bit of sunshine at the end. I wanted to include this clip of us leaving towards the top of the world highway, getting back on the ferry, because in a previous video I boarded this ferry and there was a little bit of water coming over the front, and I wanted to illustrate to everybody that that's not a normal experience, although honestly probably pretty normal for sailing people. Though I clearly belong in the air and not in water. Now this is a little bit of a weird episode because I think when we had our day off here in Dawson, it finally dawned on us that we were actually headed home. Now when I say that we were headed home, we were not headed home the same way. We are taking an entirely different route on the way back, with the exception of only about a 10-kilometer stretch. It will all be road that we haven't been on yet. And by road that we haven't been on yet, I mean over 3,000 kilometers of road we haven't been on yet. So going home is a little bit of a matter of perspective because we are a long way from home. So all of this video takes place over a 2-day journey for us that took us from Dawson City in the Yukon over top of the World Highway down to the Tetlin Junction near Chilkat, Alaska, and then down through Kluane National Park to eventually Haines in Alaska. Now, the top of the World Highway is a little bit of a weird experience to talk about. The camera, I mean, it shows beautiful footage, and here you can kind of see the size and scale of it, but it's a weird case where you're up on top of the mountains the entire way through this road. It's 281 kilometers from Dawson City to the Tetlin Junction, and probably the first 160-ish is up on top of these mountains, or very close to them. And as far as I can tell, it was made in the 30s and 40s on the US side, and eventually in the 50s on the Canadian side as kind of a gateway into some of the gold areas. But predominantly it's used as a tourist road at this point, and it's not hard to see why people would come to this area. We're here in July, there's still snow on the side of the road. You are a ways up. I don't think that the border crossing here is the highest in the United States, but if it's not, it has to be pretty close. You are a ways up, and it is honestly probably the most picturesque border crossing that I had seen to date, although later in this video we will cross down to Haines on the Alaskan Panhandle, and that is also a beautiful border crossing. But the fellow that worked up here on the American side, he really loved his job. The scenery there is unbelievable at the border crossing. Now, unfortunately, we can't record it there, but I would have loved to have shown a picture or a video of us going through it, as it was absolutely beautiful. Now, this road that connects from Dawson City to Chicken is gravel. It is 3 to 4 lanes wide. Honestly, it was in excellent condition, much like the Dempster when we were up there. It can get a little bit slick when it gets wet, so buyer beware if you are there in inclement weather. But the roads are not the old roads in the north, and any reasonable vehicle will be able to get through with just enough time and attention, and just driving according to conditions. So well worth the trip through this area. I know it's kind of remote, but as we're coming up to Chicken here, you can't miss going to Chicken. There are so many things that we could talk about with Chicken, most of them inappropriate. They really do truly lean into the whole chicken thing, but it is worth stopping simply because it's a little bit of a comedy. Now we'll circle back to the miles of the trip afterwards, but the distance from Dawson City to Chicken is entirely on gravel and is approximately 170 kilometers. Now, Chicken, as you can see, this is pretty much the entire town. They do truly lean into this whole chicken idea. I'm not sure what the joke is, but I'm sure it's hilarious. As you can see, they have 2 giant roosters. We're just going to leave it at that. And they have these little signs like laid in Chicken, Alaska. And, obviously you need to take pictures of that. It's a little bit of a famous stop. And inside the store, they have all kinds of chicken paraphernalia, stuff that I would have never thought of. Now, the road out of Chicken is about another 100 kilometers before you get to Tetlin Junction, and then I believe probably about 10 kilometers to the west. You can get into Tok, Alaska. Now, I worked in Tok, Alaska for a couple of months doing a project maybe 10 years ago. And my fondest memory of that place is that one of the visitor boards has a picture from, it looked like the 1950s, of the mayor riding into City Hall or a city building on the back of a moose. And honestly, that's a pretty memorable thing, so super cool. From there, we headed back down towards Kluane National Park, and initially we were planning on tenting probably about 100 kilometers over the border into the Yukon, but we weren't able to because my app once again disappointed us with a tenting spot that they had marked that was non-existent. And at that point, it was starting to get dark, which was a new experience for us after being in the 24-hour sunlight. But it was pouring rain for the last 4 or 5 hours that day, and eventually we just ended up in Destruction Bay, and we stayed the one night in the motel that we did the whole trip at the Talbot Arms Motel, which honestly, great food there. I've stayed there many times before, and I enjoyed every time. It's a very uniquely Yukon experience. Now, this stunning lake to the left is far more stunning when it's daylight outside, but it's a Emerald Lake, Kluane Lake, beautiful, beautiful, and glacier fed. It is right next to the, I'll try to pronounce this as Chilkat Pass, I guess, park or visitor center. And off to the side here, which you'll see a picture of in a second, on that mountainside, there's 2 distinct Dall sheep family where you can set up in this visitor center and take the binoculars and peek up into there and look at them when the cloud's not obscuring them. Although, quite honestly, it was pretty beautiful with the clouds there on this day. Now, one of the things that this makes this my favorite area is Mount Logan. So I'm going to nerd out here for 30 seconds because it's my video. Mount Logan is in Kluane National Park, and it is a gigantic mountain. It's the second highest mountain in North America and the tallest mountain in Canada at approximately 18,000 feet. It's slightly shorter than Denali. But what's neat about it is that by prominence, which is the distance that you can see of the mountain, or from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, is 17,200 and some feet. For reference, those of you that have seen Mount Robson, which looks gigantic in person, the prominence is 9,281 feet. So Logan stands alone with no shoulder mountains at almost twice the height of Mount Robson. Now, you can only see it from the air, unfortunately. You can hike into it as well, but there was no way for us to get there by bike, which is, well, probably good, but it's also unfortunate. But I've seen it from the air many times, and it sticks an entire mountain range above the mountains around it. And here we are at the Chilkat Pass. Cool place, kind of strange scenery, as we'll talk about here in a second, but it's fairly high altitude, lots of snow still on the sides of the roads, but also phenomenally green. I don't know if it was just because of the rain or not, but here's James practicing safety with his fully loaded lightweight bike. He's getting much better at wheelies. I've been riding a long time now, and I am demonstrably terrible at wheelies. I can do them all the time when I'm racing on my race bike, but for whatever reason, just total brain cramp when it comes to road bikes. Now, this area is pretty remote, obviously being between Haines Junction and Haines, but it's beautiful in its own right. I'm not sure what you would call the terrain up near the top of the pass, but as you're coming down, you're going to see that we have a whole pile of these towering mountains on the right-hand side of the screen, or on the west, that are snow-covered. And what's weird about it is that the left-hand side, or the east side of the mountains, is not snow-covered. And I know that the sun kind of works that way, with it setting in the west, but it ended up with this really cool effect where half of it seemed really cold, the other half seemed very tropical and kind of west coast rainy. But once again, obviously, there was no day that we could go through that we didn't get rained on, and it was pretty cold when we were up here. It was down near zero from memory riding through. And with the winds and so on, honestly, it was getting a little tiring. This is like, it's day 17 on it now, and being wet and rainy for the 17th straight day, it was tough, but the scenery in this area was beautiful. And something unique that I hadn't really seen before with the northern coastal mountains. Last time I was up here, we didn't get this far out near the coast, but I was very glad that we'd added it in. Now, what was different about this area from my previous trips through is honestly almost a complete absence of large wildlife. We did see a lot. I mean, we were out there for 23 or 24 days. So we did see lots of bears and moose and elk and things, but not as many as I normally would. And I don't know if it was just an off year for them, or whether maybe being there in the midsummer they were off in different areas feeding. But it was a little bit different because normally this area is just polluted with animals. As you can see here, we came down from the pass down to sea level to get into Haines in Alaska, and the mountains were very, very interesting to me. It got returned to, it's a little bit different than the west coast down in Vancouver area, but honestly, it made me think of Hawaii. I know that a lot of people will say that it doesn't, but it's kind of these just straight up mountains out of the ocean and just covered in trees. It was very rainforesty in there. You'll see a picture of our camping spot at the end of the video, and lots of ferns and just moist as anything, but Haines itself is a cool little town. From what we were told from the people that live there, is the people that actually live there live in Haines, and the ones that are more tourist oriented, where all of the cruise ships are, live in Skagway. You can see my legs hanging off the bike there. We were pretty tired. You know what? We were having a good time, but like any time you spend 10 or 12 hours a day on a little dual sport, eventually your legs start to hurt, and so does your butt. But Haines itself is a beautiful little town. A little expensive for my taste, but it is impossible to deny how picturesque it is. I love the ocean. I love seeing where the freshwater and the seawater meet. Love ships, love boats. So it was just an incredibly cool little town, and very clean. Obviously, it's got some tourist legs for it, but it was just it was a nice change from all the time that we'd spent through the interior and up in the north. It had not been friendly at the Northern Ocean, so it was pretty nice that we got down to the south, where things were a lot more reasonable and kind of calm. So we ended up staying in Haines overnight, and once again my app let me down a little bit. The spot that it sent it was not supposed to be used by people on motorbikes or cars, and that wasn't included in the information. So we ended up going a little bit north from Haines into a place called Salmon Run Campground, I believe. It'll be coming up here in a second. It was a really nice campground. It was the most expensive by far that we'd paid, but it was a beautiful place. The scenery was amazing. Looking out over the sound, and as it turned out, the owners of this place were both from Edmonton, which is right next to St. Albert in Alberta, but they'd been coming up here for the last 5-6 years and now own the campground, and honestly that'd be a cool retirement business in my opinion. So until next time, we will be finishing out the series next week with the Skagway trip, White Pass, a little bit of White Horse, and then Liard Hot Springs, and I'm excited to share the last little bit of the trip. It's been a really cool adventure, and I've really enjoyed sharing it with you guys.